15 years in business ownership. Well, I'll talk about that with a peer of sorts today on Builder Live. Entrepreneurship is a dirty, dangerous, short-lived affair for many, but some make it out. 15 years ago, we had technically published what was our first post, and I was amused to see that a company we cover frequently is also celebrating 15 years. Fearless, who we're going to hear from via Delali Dzirasa, the CEO and founder. Delali, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Congrats on the 15 years, man. Big deal.
Same to you. So I want to talk a bit about what it feels like to survive 15 years. You're at a larger scale, so I'm excited to see what it looks like inside, what changes, what doesn't change. But maybe start off. How did you celebrate 15 years? What was 15 years like for Fearless and you individually?
It's interesting. When we hit our 15 year, I reflected a little bit and I got up the next day and I got to work. So I am notoriously bad at stopping and smelling the roses. So I've been getting some advice on how to get better at that. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the years, which isn't great, is starting off, I was in such survival mode early on that I just learned how to get up and get back to work. Get up and get back to work. So now I've gotten pretty good at that, right? And so even when big things happen, I gotta just get up and get back to work. So I need some active coaching and mentoring on how to pause and celebrate a little bit.
One of my resolutions involves that I bought a 6-pack of small Prosecco bottles, and I've told myself that at least once a month I'm going to open one. And forcing myself to do that means that I can lower the standards of what I'm willing to celebrate.
Fair. I like that.
I'm also bad at that. All right, so let's do some advice doling. We always like this reflection. What didn't you know, or what do you wish you knew, or what would you advise yourself if you look back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago? What's some of the stuff that stands out to you when you look back?
I think I would think about really two things. Number one being this sense of balance between what's urgent and what's important. When you start a company, you're a startup founder, everything is urgent. Everything is on fire. Literally, this check doesn't come in. This one contract doesn't go our way. This one person doesn't sign. We could be done, right? And so it is just, you got to stomach it, and you just have to survive, right? You have to survive through that early stage. And so between urgent and important, everything's urgent early on. And then you get to a state where, okay, all right, well, we can screw up this one project. You're not going to die. You can take a little vacation for a couple of days, right? And then you're thinking about important things. We need a new process for this, right? We're not looking at how we onboard effectively. It's causing issues, right? And so these are important things you have to figure out, but they're not. If we don't get them wrong today, if we don't get it right today, we're not going to die, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was starting to invest in some of those early things, and there are a lot that we didn't know, right? So we did some of the things we knew, and some of the stuff we kind of kicked the can down the road. I think now what I'm learning is you've got to apply that same sense of urgency to important things, right? And so there are important things in the company that the longer you kick the can, we're unraveling things now for decisions I made, 5 and 10 years ago, right? That now we've got to fix that are extremely complex now. We've got lots of employees. And so we've got to make sure we got career paths right, and all the job descriptions are good, right? And all the things that you'd expect to kind of have as a company is scaling, we kind of didn't invest a lot of energy and resources into those things. And so it's a lot of cleanup where I would say do those things pretty urgently early on, and your future self will absolutely thank you for it.
Because you hit on an important point there that it's always a fallacy that you're going to solve it all.
Yeah.
I shared with you before we started I will always remember early on in Technically's journey on the editorial side. I still did more of our reporting back then. I remember interviewing a prominent Maryland CEO and founder who I respected and was an early, Technically champion. He had done a pretty meaningful exit. And I remember saying hey, what was the best part of that exit? And his answer to me was, I remember the first night I didn't have to worry about payroll. And he was a company who he had sold a company for several tens of millions of dollars. It was a relatively serious scale, particularly at that stage. And I remember being a couple years in, like, wait, the one of the things you're most happy about is not have to sweat this payroll. I worry about that, and I'm like
Yeah.
3 people and barely making it alive. And that clicked for me that there's just always a new challenge that you don't
Mhm.
actually they might get a little bigger, they make it a little more
That's right.
complicated, but you're still always facing the same or still facing challenges. So I imagine 50 years in, not everything's perfect. You're still wrestling with stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely wrestle with stuff. There's tons of operational things, and I think early on I maybe was okay to good at some of the operational issues.
Mm,
I am very bad at them now, right? I'm one bad at them, two not just they drain me, and it's not the thing that I
mm,
bring the most value to the organization, right? So while I'm doing those things and focused on the internals and some processes and systems and ops issues and integration issues, I'm not doing the thing that I'm actually good at, right? Which is going to create, build the brand, launch new initiatives within the organization, build relationships. So yes, I think you always have to keep learning, but stuff does stay the same as far as there's every day there's a customer that loves us. There's probably a customer that hates us.
yep.
Projects that are going well that aren't, and all those things just happen over time. And I think the longer you're in the business, right, the longer you're running the company, it's not that the screams are loud. It's like you get used to them. You get used to them, and you're able to kind of stay
Mm,
even keel. You're able to continue to press through, and you're able to focus. And what you get as long as you go is you have more proof points. I've seen this 15 times, right? I've seen the up and down 15 times. We made it. We're going to be okay. I know it looks crazy, everybody, but let's just keep going. We're going to get through this in a couple months. And I think you're able to build some of that context and muscle memory over time.
the, there's always luck at play. I am the first to
Yeah.
always point that out. But I really like what you said around on the proof points. That if you're on the entrepreneur side and you found it, or you even just worked at a company for a long
Yeah.
period of time, you have enough data points that you start getting okay at having a handle on what is truly threatening and what
Yep.
is just something that has to be managed. I think a lot about the line, if you're worrying about it, you don't have to worry about it. And
Yep.
and what that has meant to me is, on the
Mhm.
whole, as on the entrepreneur, you've been at it for a while,
Yeah.
you probably have a pretty good gut at what your biggest problem is. And
Yeah.
if you're sweating it or challenged by it, you're chewing it up. That's probably that's what you have to do. That is,
Yeah.
you're doing the work. You're
Sure.
trying to
Let's
figure it
do it.
out. That is it. Um, so I guess I'm kind of curious, do you look back, are there things that you would have done differently knowing what you
Yeah.
know now, or is it say la vie?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just installing our first board of advisors. I would have done that a
Uh,
lot earlier with
okay.
organizations, right? And reason being is, was talking to a good friend, said, we're at point A and we're trying to get to point B, right? And we're figuring it out, we're making it through and talking to people. And he said there's something to having someone that's been to point C, D, and E, right? That can say, you know
Mm,
what? Some of the stuff you get to create is net new, but some of this is like just best practice, and you just have to do it. And we can show you what good looks like, right? And help you to get there. And so, I think early on, I didn't really understand the difference between mentors and advisors, right? And so I had
mm,
mentors that would coach and I'd go talk to. And so I was always pretty good about that, asking for advice. But I really see mentors as people that are there to support me, Delali, the person, right? In my
mhm.
career, in my development. So they may be long lived over a period of time and help me to navigate, crises and things through my personal life versus advisors. They're for the company. They're there to advise on the
Yeah.
company's best interest, right? And where the company needs to go. And it may mean that, our big crisis today is, if let's say if we're trying to take our company and we want to go to the moon, right? We
Mhm.
probably want to get people that know how to like build a rocket ship, right?
Right.
And like advise to do that, right? But if we want to go on a long sailing expedition, we probably need advisors that have done that, right? And so it's a different set of advisors, and the dynamics of the business change all the time. And so you have to have different groups of advisors at different moments within your company in order to help you get to that next destination.
You made me think something that I still wrestle with is how do I rightly identify something as a mystery or a puzzle, that
Yep.
framework of what you just hit on. Some things are puzzles. There are answers that you just have to go
That's
across
right.
those answers, and best practices is just do them.
Yep.
But then other things, because of the environment, like, I don't know, navigating a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
just unique business circumstances,
Yep.
or unique to whatever your sales approach.
Mm-hmm.
Times when, like, you are the best person and you
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of like talk it out with, and I've
Yeah.
I didn't always get that right. Like sometimes I would say, "Hey, Delali, you surely just have the answer. Just give me the answer."
Mhm.
I was really looking. I was in a mystery,
Yeah,
and like I could talk it out with Delali, but honestly, I'm the only one who can
that's right.
balance it. I just need Delali to help me kind of talk it out and figure
Yeah,
out where I'm supposed to go, as opposed to like you're alluding to. Sometimes when you get just confronted with a challenge that has a solution, just go acquire the person that knows
that's right.
what the burn rate
Mhm.
of a NASA spaceship or whatever is.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that a thing? Like, talk to me a bit about when you've said, "All right, this is when I need to acquire answers," as opposed to I need to think through a strategy.
Yeah, it's great. Like so when Fearless was starting, I think a lot of it was not an answer, but strategy, right? So I'm
Mm,
trying to do this thing. Well, I'll say a little bit of both, right? I'm trying to do this thing. I want it to be different. It's gonna be purple, not just the color, but unique in how we support the market. Um, but it didn't make sense for us when we relocated, potentially relocated to Baltimore to move further away from our primary customer, right? To do something completely
right.
different, right? And so
At a
it
point, you
got
had a lot of government contracts, the Department of Defense contracts, and then you moved a little farther north. You moved
that's right.
away from those customers, but for other
That's right.
reasons.
That's right. That's right. And so, but there were like tactical things like you have to register in this database to do federal contracts, right? That is just the answer. You got to do it. Here's how you fill out the form, right? But there are pieces around like what makes Fearless unique. What's this thing and this vision that I see in my head that I'm trying to create because I haven't seen it before, right? I'm trying to create
Yeah.
something net new. And so I think the job of a founder in those states are you go seek out mentorship to get perspective, right? Not to give you the
Hmm.
answer. They give you perspective, right? You go to 5 different people, they will give, and I did that, and they give you 5 different answers, right? And
Yep.
it's your job to just take that in, assess it, and say, okay, am I missing anything? Now let me make an educated decision that makes sense for me, and for this business and where we are. But I just need you to help provide perspective in those scenarios.
I love that perspective because I think that is something over time I've gotten a little more comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Like sometimes I just need you to ask me a few questions or prod
that's
me
right.
along a little bit, but secretly I'm just figuring it out.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I think maybe 12 years ago I thought that was spinning my wheels, but I think I've better gotten it is the work. It is my job now
Hmm.
is to just chew on
Hmm.
that thing. Talk to me a bit about milestones, like
Yeah,
that others might identify with, or just kind of help, like when you're on that path, employee counts, big
yeah,
moments, like
yeah.
what charts the course of Delali and Fearless over that 15 years.
Yeah, I think a few things. I think actually I can remember a couple. I've been thinking about this.
Hmm.
So one, the first time the bank account crossed 100K, I was like, "Oh, there's like an extra
Yeah.
digit. That's pretty cool." And so that was an interesting milestone. I think for us when um, from a numbers perspective, $1 million in revenue, that was
Yeah.
also kind of a big
Yeah.
milestone. I think when we hired our first executive team, right?
Mm.
Up until that point, I had been supporting largely BD and a lot of the internal ops, and John would run the projects and run the programs, right? And we end up moving to Baltimore. So it was about beginning of 2016, right? And that signified us like getting really loud about who we are and what we're going to do. And this is like say like Fearless 2.0, our second iteration, right?
Mm.
And so new place, new focus, really clear on mission and values. And we brought on a leadership team. And I remember when they got hired, it was like, oh my God, it's like a real company. It's like a company. This is weird, right? It's like a
Yeah.
thing. And I don't have to run BD. And we have like a CFO that can do finances. And we got someone doing brand. And so it was a thing where we had a team now to do this. And I think that was a big, I don't know, that was kind of a big moment that maybe this thing was real. Um, I think one project that really was super memorable to me was the National Museum of African American History and Culture. When
Mm.
we won that national bid, and we had been working on that for a couple of years, trying to get positioned for that. Just the moment in the time, it was during the pandemic. It was post George Floyd. So there's a lot of just racial tension in the air and conversations that were happening across the country. So to be able to release um, the slavery and freedom exhibit like in that moment
Mm.
was it was pretty powerful. It was pretty powerful moment that I don't think that I'll forget, and felt like we were contributing to the conversation and contributing to the healing, and had some 140 countries accessing
Mm.
that web property. So that was those were a couple of really powerful moments for me.
I get the sense I could go a lot longer with you, but I'm at time. So why don't you What's the message, if you could send back a little video message back to Delali 15 years ago, or to a founder who's, on the earlier side now, what's that message at the beginning of the journey you're now 15 years into?
Stay focused, keep your head down, right? You have to grind, but there is something on the other end. I mean, I'd go back to my get advice, get feedback, get perspective from people, but you are creating something that has never been created before, right? And so you got to trust that gut, you have to trust that instinct, and you got to press forward. And if you do that, things start to happen.
That's the best way to go at it. We can. Delali, congrats on 15 years, and thanks for checking out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See everybody.